Hi everyone, Tristan here from Montreal Music Labs. How are you all doing today? Please let me know if you can hear me clearly, and if you ever have any questions, feel free to shout out in chat. Um, Today we're going to be looking at some of the basics of VM1, how it works with Vienna Ensemble Pro 7, and after that we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive into some of the neat ways that it can affect your workflow and how you compose and mix with Vienna Ensemble Pro 7. So I'll just get started here. For those of you who are maybe less familiar with Vienna Ensemble Pro 7, um, it's generally organized into servers, instances, and channels. And what that means is a server is a computer that runs Vienna Ensemble Pro 7. An instance is uh, is something within a server. You can have one or multiple that will host all of your instruments or other effects. And channels are the individual sort of instruments or effects channels within an instance. And so there's sort of this tree structure that kind of comes from that. You can have multiple servers with multiple instances with multiple channels. And we're going to look at how VM1 helps you manage those. Traditionally, for those of you who work with multiple computers, the only way to sort of manage Vienna Ensemble Pro's different channels or servers was to have a different keyboard or mouse or screen sharing and monitor to sort of manually go over and change those things. What we've got now is we can do it all right from an iPad. And you'll see here on my iPad that we can see both my PC server and my MacBook Pro acting as a server. And if I go into the PC, we can see the different instances I have here. Actually, I'll go back for a second. If we go to my MacBook Pro, you'll see that there are no instances loaded, as you can also see on the MacBook, on the Mac in front of you as well. There's nothing there. But we're going to go back to the PC for a sec, and I'll pull up the PC view here. So on PC, I've got 3 instances loaded here. I've got my Spitfire chamber strings, I've got my woodwinds, and I've got my keys. And if I click on woodwinds, I can see all my woodwinds here, right in VM1. And we'll see all 16 channels here and all 16 channels here. If I come back, I can always swipe back. I can choose my Spitfire chamber strings. And of course, Vienna Ensemble Pro in the background also changes. So what that means is I'm always getting a live update of what we're actually seeing. And if I want, I can come into my Violins 1 here, and I can get a deeper view of the channel strip. So I can see that I've got Violins 1, it's a channel of contact. And on the right, I've got a little fader, which you can see up here controls the fader in VE Pro. Like that. I'll put it back to 0 for now. And it can also control the panning, just like that. Again, I'll put that back to 0 for now, thereabouts. This is sort of an overview of what the interface looks like and how you can work with it. Along the bottom, you'll see a little plus button, which can allow you to add channels or instances. There's an edit button, the little wrench or spanner, and you can choose which channels you may want to edit. We'll take a look at that as well. We have an advanced view, which just offers a few more options. So we can see that same fader as before. Again, I'll move my Violins 1, and you can see the fader move in Vienna Ensemble Pro here. I can change output, or I can change the MIDI channel. Sorry about that. I can change the MIDI channel. Again, I don't want to. I want to leave them as they are. that just provides an easy way to kind of oversee exactly what's going on. For example, in my woodwinds where I have 16 channels, it makes it very easy to see what is where and how I can make quick changes to something that might otherwise sort of take me out of my process. As someone who works in Logic, I'm very much focused working on my Mac. So always having to go to my PC for a small change, such as a MIDI channel mistake or an output, or even just adjusting the level a little bit, it always takes me out. Now, you might be asking, why would you want to change the level in VE Pro when I could just do that in Logic? Generally, when I mix in Logic. Well, as I said, we're going to take a bit of a deep dive into an interesting way that you can use Vienna Ensemble Pro as a pre-mixer for all of your projects in Logic. And as again, we'll come back to that in a little bit. The next button you see down here, actually, I'll come over to keys now, is what we call the stacks button. Stacks is when you have multiple channels on multiple instruments on the same MIDI channel. So in VE Pro here, you can see I've got 3 pianos, Walker 1, Fazioli 1, Bosendorfer 1, and then I've got, it's a 2 piano setup, so I've got Walker 2, Fazioli 2, Bosendorfer 2. Now the first three here are all on MIDI channel 1, and the second 3 are all on MIDI channel 2. What this is going to allow us to do is we can treat this as a stack. So we can either play them all back together, or we can play them back separately using some neat tools. But when you're looking in the channels view of VM1 here, you can see, I can see them all if I want, or I can just collapse them into a stack like this. And then in the center left, you'll see a little stack icon with the number 3, telling me that there are 3. Coming back for a minute here. In each case, each of these little boxes, you'll see an ID number, such as 1 and 2. That's server 1 and server 2. In this case, we can see which one is Windows, which one is Mac. Convenient little thing. Coming back into my PC, for instances in the top left, again, we can see 1 for instance 1, instance 2, instance 3. In the top right, there's an enable and disable button. What this does is it allows us to quickly enable or disable an entire instance of channels, taking them out of RAM and also saving on CPU power. And we feel this is just a really simple and convenient way to work to manage all of your different sounds. You can see now that they are all disabled. And so with just one single tap, if I wanted to have 20 instances loaded, sort of ready to go, but not have to go new instance, open that project, etc., I can just have them all kind of ready to go. And then when I want one, I can just enable it. And just like this, it will just re-enable all of the channels. In the bottom left of VM1, you can see a little blue circle. That is the color of the instance. You'll also see a little plug icon if it is connected to your DAW. In this case, it is connected to Logic. Okay, let's come back here. Oops, not the MacBook Pro. It's still reloading the woodwinds. So we can see that it's connected to an instance in Logic. And if you have the audio engine running in your woodwinds, if you have the audio engine running for your instance, that's in the bottom right. Now, coming back, say in our chamber strings here, again, you'll see an instance ID in the top left. You'll see a power enable disable button in the top right. Again, just like with instances. In the bottom left, we can see what kind of channel it is. In this case, it's a little keyboard for an instrument channel. If it's a folder, Here, I'll add a folder, and we can see now there's a little folder icon. I don't actually want that though, so I'm just going to edit. Sorry about that. I can just come here and edit and delete the folder. Seem to be having a little crash. Sorry about that. That's okay. Coming back in. Okay. That's a folder. And of course, there's an icon for auxiliary tracks or buses in VE Pro. So that's a sort of an overview. And again, once we're in the channel strip, we can see a few more options. We showed the pan and the fader. We can see what kind of instrument is loaded in. In this case, it's Contact. I can add effects as well to the channel. If I want to add, say, VSL's new Equalizer Pro, I can just add one right in like that. And now if we come to the mixer view, we'll see that an equalizer has been added. So coming back for a second now, let's take a look at creating some creating things in Vienna Ensemble Pro with VM1 in Vienna Ensemble Pro 7. So we're going to come back to my Mac here where there's nothing loaded. And we're going to see if I hit the plus button, I've got the option to create some instances. I can choose a name. I already had woodwinds and strings in my other computer, so I'll add some brass here. I'll set a color. I can make it blue, let's say. Set. Yes, I want them enabled and the audio engine running, and maybe I'll create 2. And when I hit add, you'll see that 2 are just created right away, and it auto-named them brass and brass 2. And here you can see a bus channel with the little bus icon in the bottom left. But maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I didn't want 2 instances. If I want, I can hit the wrench or spanner button, choose brass 2, edit, and delete instance. And just like that, can get rid of it. If I wanted, let's say I created too many instances, and I said, whoa, 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 I didn't mean to add that many. I can actually just edit, select all, edit, and delete instances. So this makes it really easy to just create and edit and delete things in Vienna Ensemble Pro. But of course, we do want to work with something here, so I'll go back and I'll create that brass instance. Come back here, make it blue, and just 1 is fine. I'll come into my brass instance, and I'll see the master bus. We'll leave that there for now. And again, by hitting the plus button, I can choose a preset or plugin. I'll say, you know what, let's create some Synchron player. And I'll set a color, maybe make it that same blue. I want to make sure that they're enabled. I want to assign a MIDI channel of 1, and I want to make it ascending. I'm going to create 5 channels, and I'm going to make it ascending, so it'll be MIDI channels 1 through 5. And the output, I'll leave them going to the master bus. Sure. So quantity, 5, and add. So now in Vienna Ensemble Pro on my Mac, I've created the 5 channels. Created the 5 channels. Sorry, just give me a second here. MacBook Pro, brass. And if I click on the advanced view, I can see channels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, if I want, I can click on master where it says master bus, and I can change that to output 1, 2, change that to output 3, 4, and leave the others on master bus. Or I can say, select the spanner, select all, I'll deselect the master bus, edit, and I'll go MIDI channel 1 ascending, output 1, 2, ascending, and save. And so just like that, I can really batch create lots of things. If I wanted, I can also select all and edit the name. Instead of master bus, I'll call this brass. Just leave that enabled. Hide the keyboard and save. And all the channels will be renamed. It's as simple as that. Now we're going to take a look at a more concrete example of a project that I've got going. I'm going to come over to Logic here, and we're going to see a few things. So we're going to see, actually, you know what? One last thing to show. If I'm in brass and I don't want to move away, I don't want VM1. VM1 will always auto move to whatever is selected in Vienna Ensemble Pro. So right now I'm going to click on Woodwinds on my PC, and I now see Woodwinds on VM1. But if I didn't want that, I can hit the little lock button down here, and the screen will stay. Will stay put. So if you're looking on my PC, I can click Chamber, Keys, Woodwinds, Chamber, and it doesn't move. But if I undo the lock, now when I go to Keys, it goes to Keys. Chamber, it goes to Chamber. So again, that's just a nice little option to have. Finally, in the top right of the screen, you'll see that I'm connected to the VM1 helper located on Tristan's MacBook Pro. And in the top left, you'll see a menu where I have a few options. I can choose to view all my servers, and it'll bring me back to that sort of home page. I can tap on it again. I can see all my instances on PC1. I can click on my MacBook Pro to see what's there. If I want, I can even disable something right from here. But I'll leave them all running for now. The lock is I'll bring that back up. The lock button is Vienna Ensemble Pro's preserve function, so that if your DAW project closes, the instruments will stay loaded in the background. And the chain is to show if it's connected. So let's come over to my PC1. Let's take a quick listen to what I've got going here on my Mac. I'll just hit that. And here we go. So, just a little something from Carnival of the Animals. I've got a few things going there, and you can let me know if the levels are good, if something is too loud or not. Just gonna make a quick adjustment here. Great. So I can, this is a pretty straightforward piece. I've got some strings. I've got two pianos, and I've got some flute as well as a celesta. One of the neat things about VM1 is our ability to use stacks in interesting ways. Now, I said before that a stack can be used to either, it's multiple instruments on the same MIDI channel. And we can use that to, say, create a very layered textured sound where I put a flute, a trumpet, and a vibraphone all on one channel, and I can listen to them back to back and maybe mix them together. In this case, the example I have here, I've got 3 different piano sounds. So when working on this piece, I might say, I'm not sure if this piano sound is right. So this is with my Fazioli currently. Uh, the way to know this is if we come along the bottom here, we're going to see stack select. Stacks, along the bottom here, we have a few different buttons: stack select, stack mute, stack enable, and stack solo. It's a lot of words, but once you get to know what it means, it's actually pretty straightforward. Stack select really just selects the channel in Vienna Ensemble Pro. And so I could make, here, I'll pull up the PC again. You can see if I select the Fazioli, if I select the Bosendorfer, or if I select the Walker Steinway, I can just pull them up like that. And of course, I can just make little adjustments to the level as I like, independently of one another. Now, it so happens that I want to leave these at 0 for where they are. Stack mute is exactly what it says. I can take something and I can choose to mute them. You can, right now they're all unmuted, or I can mute them all, just like that. I'll leave the Fazioli unmuted. Enable, again, this is just like I showed you before with instances. I can choose to take something out of RAM, and it will not use any CPU or memory. And you can see here that Bosendorfer 1 is now grayed out. And if I click back on it, it will reload. Again, just sort of a convenient way. Now, the real cool one here is stack solo. I can use this to sort of sample or audition multiple pianos, all coming from the same track in my DAW. So we're just gonna hit play here, and we'll just sort of listen to a few. This is the Fazioli. Here's the Walker. And here's the Bosendorfer. And just like that, I can make a choice like, oh, you know what? I think I want to use the Walker instead of my Fazioli. So because I'm using a two piano setup, I'll come over here, stack solo, and choose the Walker. And now, when I come back to my Mac, I can now listen to my entire piece with these two other piano sounds. Maybe I like that more. Maybe I want to go back and hear the Bosendorfers, but now I want to hear them in context. So just like that, we can use stacks as a way to, again, audition and sort of live on the fly, try new sounds in context without having to add new tracks in my DAW, copy MIDI regions, play things around, worry about what licenses are installed on which computer. If I know everything is on my external servers, I don't have to worry about bringing a license over to try putting them on the new thing. If you set this all up ahead of time with your, say, 3 or 4 or 5 favorite piano sounds, it becomes really easy. And in Logic or your DAW of choice, it just really remains as simple as having one channel, one track in your DAW manage everything. So I think this is a really neat feature and just provides some really extra functionality that doing this manual muting of other channels in VE Pro would have been a little tricky without VM1. And we feel that this is just a really simple and neat way to just simplify your workflow, but keep you in the creative process of choosing the right sound and making sure that you're staying more on the creative side and less on the technical and worrying about, what buttons to click when and where. It's really quite simple to just choose your favorite piano sound as is. Let's go back to the other one. This one's a slightly more complicated example with the two pianos, but I think you can appreciate the idea. And of course, if I choose the Walker as my favorite piano, I can now, right from here, just disable the Bosendorfer and the Fazioli. Come over here, same thing, disable them. They're now out of memory and won't be using CPU at all. So a really easy way to just audition different sounds and then free up system resources as needed. Moving on though, that's not all we can do with VM1 and projects. Sort of real world examples of how you can use it to improve your workflow with projects. In this example, I've chosen the aquarium from Carnival of the Animals, but I'm sort of working on, I've started working on this to do a few of them. And I don't have just the aquarium, I also have the aviary. But the aviary is in a separate project. How do I maintain the same sort of mix between one project and the other? Sometimes in film music, your mix might be very different from one cue to a next, depending on the type of work you do. So maybe it makes sense to keep everything in your DAW project. But in this case, I want to make sure that the orchestra kind of sounds and feels somewhat the same, or that there might be some global choices or decisions that I want to be reflected across all my projects. And this can apply just as much in film as well, I find. So in this case, if we look at my chamber strings, I have my strings set up as violins 1, 2, violas, cellos, basses, and I have a separate channel with the deca-tree return. So on each of these channels, these are the close mics. I'll pull this up on my PC. You can see I've got the close mics on the main tracks, and then on the deca-tree, I have only the trees returning. And this for me is a way of recreating that traditional recording setup where you would have the deca-tree as a stereo, sort of as a stereo image, and then you could have close mics for each of the individual instruments. And it's not just like that in VE Pro, it's like that in my DAW as well. So when I play my violins 1, we can see signal in both channels there. I can see it on the violin 1 track and on the deca-tree track. So, and likewise for violins 2, violas, cellos, and basses. This is a way that I like to work, but now I want to make some changes to that balance of close mic versus tree mic. For example, maybe when I started working, I wanted more close and less deca-tree. So I'm going to bring that deca-tree down by -12. If I take a look here on the advanced view, I can kind of see that my deca is lower than the other ones. And now I can do a bit of a playback and see how that sounds. Okay, maybe that's fine, but maybe I want to try something different. Maybe I want to go deca-tree up and everyone else down. I want to keep the close mics down. Something like that. And now I can listen to that. Maybe I like that, maybe I don't. But once I've made a decision, this mix will now carry over to every other project. So if I come over and I open Recent and the Aviary, and I go, yes, close, sure, we can save. So we'll just take a second. So what you're going to notice is now these mix decisions that I've made in VM1 that's connected to Vienna Ensemble Pro 7 are going to apply globally to all projects that use this template. Now, in my case, I wanted this. I might want this mix to carry over. Sometimes in film projects that I've worked on, I I like to have, say, on a feature film, I like to have all my cues as separate projects. And how do I maintain some kind of mixed consistency between all of those? Well, rather than playing around rather than playing around with the levels directly in Vienna Ensemble Pro with a mouse clicking around, I can just select the channel. Come on. There we go. I can just select the channel and move it here just like that. Come back to Violins 1 and move the fader just like that. And again, moving a fader with the finger just usually feels so much more natural, and we think this is really helpful. So now we're gonna make sure that we're connected here. We are. If I come back to the Mac and we take a little listen, we're gonna see that that mix carried over. And more than that, you can hear this wonderful flute from the Vienna synchronized special editions volume. I think it just sounds great here. And likewise, any choices I made in the piano sound also translate. So if I had started with the Fazioli before, but I made that decision, I prefer that the Walker, I can easily it's that change carried over from one project to the other. So I don't have to now change this in all 14 products, or I forget exactly how many movements there are in the Carnival. But rather than having to manually change each instrument in Logic or make sure that whatever discrepancy there may have been in Vienna Ensemble Pro before, it's just a global change. And if ever if I change my mind again later, I can just come back here and redo my choices like that. This, I think, is one of those really convenient ways of being able to work with VM1 because it just provides a lot of flexibility without having to really get out of your DAW. I'm switching between the Mac and the PC view so that you can kind of get a sense of what's going on. But when you're writing and you're trying to, or mixing, you want to stay in that zone. And if you always have to like stop and open up TeamViewer and start screen sharing, and the response time isn't great, and you're looking at small text maybe, and it takes you out of that moment. And what we want to do is we really want to make that feel much more just part of the process, and just something as simple as seeing everything here and being able to just go immediately to what you need can just be a real time saver. And again, like if I want, I can just make all these changes on the fly with the advanced view. I can just come here and make slight adjustments, and that carries across the entire mix. So I think that just gives a sense of what VM1 is and can do for you. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm happy to address specific concerns. Our latest update that came out last week has a lot of changes that will improve connectivity for those of you working with multiple computers. We found a more efficient way to really make sure that everything is always seen properly. And more than that, lots of little bug fixes. So always make sure you're up to date with the latest version of the VM1 Helper app, the VM1 iPad app, as well as Vienna Ensemble Pro 7. And that's the best way to make sure that you can stay on top of, that you're always running at sort of peak performance with our product. I suppose we can take a second here and talk briefly about the VM1 Helper app. You'll see on Mac here, it lives in your menu bar. You can choose whether you want it to start automatically upon your system launch. Um, don't worry too much about verbose logging. We will ask that if you're having a specific issue. Registration, you can see that my application is registered. If not, you can enter your activation code there. You can see which version of the helper you're running. If you click on that, it will bring you to our website, to the product page. And of course, you can quit it from here as well. If you're working on PC, the VM1 helper app lives down in your applications in the start menu. And an important note, it's good not to run more than one VM1 helper app at the same time. It can really mess up the communication. But just so you know, actually I didn't, right. You can see it here in the application menu. And it will show up in your system tray down here. In this case, I'm not running it on the PC because I've got it running on my Mac. And so that's pretty much it. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask. We're happy to make sure that this is as helpful for you as possible. Otherwise, I think that's about it for what I wanted to talk about today. We've got lots of features and ideas that we want to implement that will be coming in the future. We want to, of course, provide some control over for example, I added where did I add that? EQ. We want to add further control of plugin parameters. That's one major thing. Another thing that we want to be able to add is greater control over what you can add when you're adding instruments or other plugins. And of course, greater automation. So these are all some things that are on our mind and we're constantly working on developing. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I encourage you to sign up for a newsletter on our website at montrealmusiclabs.com. It's at the bottom of the main page. You can sign up there. We can get you all sorts of, you'll get not too many emails, but you'll get notice when there are major updates or other improvements, as well as any additional deals. Finally, you'll see that if you want to see more information, if you want to learn more about not just VM1, but other aspects of sort of tech tips and other things, we will be adding more and more content to our YouTube channel. I've got one that I want to release soon on how I like to work with Logic and Logic's user strips. How am I changing screen on the iPad? Or am I swiping? Hi, Wayne. So changing screen on the iPad, you can only swipe to go back. And if you click and to go sort of forward or deeper inside something, you can just tap one and it will bring you further in to that bit. But you can only swipe back. The other option, of course, is in the top left, the menu bar, the menu button. You can see your different options here. See which instances are loaded, or just view all servers. And you can use that to navigate. So even from here, I can just jump right to my keys on my PC, and we can see that. So I hope that answers your question. Are there any other questions? And again, I should also specify, by clicking on something in Vienna Ensemble Pro, it will bring you to that page on VM1. If I click on chamber, it brings me to chamber. If I click on woodwinds, it brings me woodwinds, unless I hit the lock button in the bottom, in which case VM1 will always stay where it is, just like that. Oh, my pleasure. Something to note for those of you watching in chat, there is about a 10 to 15-second delay, I believe. So it might take me a second to pick up on your question. But yeah, I think that's otherwise it. Yes, it will be posted for later viewing. It stays up live on the YouTube channel. Right, and so as I was gonna mention, if you are interested in sort of these different tutorials or tips or other walkthroughs or ideas about how to work with Vienna Ensemble Pro and your DAW, we're going to be doing that here. We'll be posting different videos on YouTube. If you otherwise want to follow general news of what we're up to or interesting things, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So wait around just in case there's another question. Actually, one last thing I'll show while I'm here. I'm gonna switch back over to my Mac so you can see something. This is something that we're gonna work on bringing more to more DAWs. For the time being, there are a few features that are Logic specific because we have specific access to their SDK, their software development kit. And what that allows us to do is, say for example, I'm going to come back to that brass patch that I had here that I created. And these aren't terribly inventive names, but I'm going to create a track in Logic. I'm going to call it, I'm not going to call it anything. But I'm going to make this my brass patch, and I'll connect it to brass. And now, let's say I wanted to rename this channel. Actually, come here. I did want to rename it here. I'll name this trumpet. If I wanted to rename this channel from brass 2 to trumpet to what I have it called in my DAW in Logic, I can go edit, and I can go set name from Logic trumpet. And just like that, it's going to rename the instance in Vienna Ensemble Pro. Here, I'll pull that up. You can see that it's now named trumpet here. So that's just a little thing. We want to bring more integration like that, and not just with Logic, but also with Cubase. These are sort of long-term goals, finding new ways to integrate Vienna Ensemble Pro with your DAW, sort of helping bridge that gap between the thing that can live on other computers or that lives in the background and really make it much more interactive and not more of a pleasure to work with, but just make it more part of your workflow in a way that may not have been the case. In the past, I know for myself, Vienna Ensemble Pro was always something that was loaded on a machine, left over there, and I didn't really touch it. But now with VM1, we're really trying to make it, to make a new way of interacting with Vienna Ensemble Pro and make that much more fun and creative. So if that's about it, I think we're going to call it there. So thank you so much for watching. If you are interested in what we're doing, please make sure to like the video, comment, subscribe to our channel, ring the bell if you want to get notifications, the little YouTube bell. Again, we're trying to put out as much as we can when we can. And yeah, if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at info@montrealmusiclabs.com, or if you have a technical question, support@montrealmusicquestions.com. We'll get all your emails though. Uh, don't hesitate, and we'll be happy to answer all your questions. Thank you so much, and we will see you later. Thank you. Bye.